This is the Trading Psychology Podcast. This is VP, creator of No Nonsense Forex and author of the book No Nonsense Forex Trading Psychology. And with me, as he is every week, it is the well-traveled Rob Reinhold.
Hello, everybody. It is great to see everyone here. This is episode 41, and I cannot believe we've done 41 episodes, but we've got at least another 41 in us, I think, Patrick.
I think so, too. You know, we have our little spreadsheet, and it doesn't always... 41 times 2 is 82. I don't think we have 82 on there, but ideas proliferate as we go. And also, that's a good segue because this particular episode came from one of you. And it was, I think, mentioned last week, if I recall. And usually we sandbag those and put them on the spreadsheet and do them later. But I thought it was appropriate that we do this now. This is going to be a fun one, I think, because this is something that almost everybody can relate to, whether you feel this emotion or not. You have definitely seen the root cause of much of it, and that is going to be envy. So, for better context, what the commenter was asking is, hey, I see a lot of these videos, especially in trading. Whether it's Forex back in the day or crypto more recently, or, even these videos still float around now, showing how these people are getting rich really quick and living a great life and showing it off. And they get a lot of positive attention. They get a lot of views, probably get some hate too, but, we'll talk about that. But there it is. And I'm over here, sweating in my job. I'm trying to do things the right way in terms of trading and learning and stuff like that. And it's a slow road, and it sucks, and it's painful, and I'm looking at these idiots, and they seem to have the life. We all kind of know what it is on the surface compared to what it really is, but that doesn't make us feel better about it. That it's always going to weigh on us a little bit. So what Rob and I want to do this week is kind of dissect that and kind of go over what many of you are likely feeling, whether you think you're feeling it or not, and then, as always, some ways to kind of process it and provide some type of solution.
And what you said there, Patrick, was how it makes you feel. And we're getting into trading psychology. And a lot of the things that you do are because of the way you feel. There's a guy named T. Harv Eker who's awesome, and he basically came up with the idea that thoughts lead to feelings and feelings lead to actions. But he says that's not true. It's programming leads to thoughts, thoughts lead to feelings, and feelings lead to action. So part of trading psychology is dealing with your feelings. And this feeling of envy is one that can get inside of you and actually ruin all the good things that are about to happen to you. So that's really why we wanted to go over it in this episode today. Let's start off with the Webster's dictionary definition for what envy is. Webster states, it is a painful or resentful awareness of an advantage enjoyed by somebody else with a desire to possess the same advantage. All right, now I really want to focus on that. I'm going to say that one more time. Painful or resentful awareness of an advantage enjoyed by someone else with a desire to possess the same advantage. Now I want to take off the first part, painful and resentful, and just read it again. Awareness of an advantage enjoyed by another person with a desire to possess the same advantage. That doesn't seem so bad. So we really have to talk about this painful and resentful part. And Patrick, I think you have so much more experience than me in this one, in the fact that, you've been online, you've been public, you've been out there, you've had people say that you're great, you've had people say you're terrible. I can only imagine the amount of envy that you have had directed at yourself, both positive and negative. What's that been like?
Yeah, I do wonder what it roots in sometimes. But I get hate for a number of reasons. We'll talk about one of those in a moment. But yeah, I think I've told you this before. The number one group, if I had to group these people, that I get the most vitriol from, and sometimes like the worst types, right, to where they write a huge paragraph, is failed YouTubers. I'll click on their profile just to see what's going on, and it's over half the time. And I don't know if this is the root cause or not, but this is something they all have the majority of them have in common, is that they have, maybe 57 subscribers over the course of maybe 6 years. They got a bunch of videos out. They didn't do very well, and they stopped at some point. Now, maybe they also trade Forex or they trade whatever, and that's how they found my channel. But it's hard to know if those really correlate, but that's just one of the interesting observations I've noticed over time. But yeah, that's certainly one of them. Is they're more kind of looking at me as a successful YouTuber as opposed to a successful trader, and that's where it's coming from. It's hard. Like, I don't know these people, but again, maybe you have a take on this, but that's one of the things I've noticed over time.
I think that makes a lot of sense because we talked about painful or resentful awareness. We look at other people, and when we see their success, we typically cheer it because we all like to see someone succeed. But when you haven't succeeded and you have all these feelings of negativity inside you, and then you see someone that has succeeded, I can see how that would be very difficult to deal with as a human being.
Yeah, I might even push back on the idea that most of us want other people to win. I don't know if that's necessarily true. Now, I've always been that way, and maybe you've always been that way, but a lot of people I talk to, it doesn't seem like they really feel the same way deep down. It's kind of like that line from There Will Be Blood. Daniel Plainfield says, I have a competition inside of me. I wish no one else to succeed. And I think a lot of people might have really felt that, because that's probably not just him. That might just be how a lot of people feel. And why do they feel that way? Maybe because life has not been going their way up until this point. So they just have that nasty, resentful, seed inside of them. I don't know, but I think there's a lot of that going on too, if I'm being honest. What do you think about that?
I think you're spot on. I think envy is way more about what's inside of you than what is outside of you that you're watching. And that's what we really wanted to focus on in this episode, is that this is all about what's inside of you. When you see somebody that's had all the success, it has nothing to do about them whatsoever, because it doesn't matter. There's always going to be some successful people and some moderately successful people. That's never going to change. But the way you look at them is all about what's inside of you. So when you're going out and you're looking at people and you're seeing all these things online of people that are being very, very successful, and you have these negative feelings of envy, we really need to talk about where those come from and how those are going to be sabotaging you. So one thing I want to start off with is just always be a little guarded when you go online. And when you see someone says, oh, I just made all this money, you don't really know, first of all, if that's true. Second of all, I've seen people have a great run for 1 year in trading and then lose it all. Anytime during that 1 year, you would look at them and think they were a genius. But if you knew the whole story, it wouldn't be all that impressive. So I just want everyone, you don't need to be skeptical. You don't need to be a jerk. But you also need to realize what's being portrayed online. And I mean, let's just use Instagram. Everyone's Instagram lives are amazing when you see them, but you don't get to see the whole story of their life. They might really be struggling with some mental health issues, but on the surface, it looks great. So I just want to first start out, if envy is an issue for you, don't take everything at face value you see online. What do you think about that, Patrick?
No, that's a really good one. And if maybe you're not hip to this, as a YouTuber who notices these things and who sees these channels and whose channel was somewhat created as a response to a lot of the channels I was seeing in the past, because I was looking for help too, and a lot of the help I was seeing was channels like that. I'm like, that's not going to help me at all, because I know what they're doing. It's not hard to catch lightning in a bottle. If you really over leverage and you just keep at it, these people might have gotten themselves, $100,000 in the hole, but then they could have made 70,000 in a span of 2 weeks if it was a really volatile week, just by finding some company that lets them take that 500 to 1 leverage and ratcheting it all up and hitting it. This is possible, and if they recorded it, they can now show that to you. So that's one way that we all know that's not sustainable, and we also know that person might still be a lot of money in the hole, and they need to make that up. Also, another way you can do it is if you want to show really great results over the course of a month or a year or something like that, Set up 10 demo accounts. Trade them all differently. One of them is bound to do really well, and just take your best one. Even if the results are unrealistic in real life, you can show people that. There's all sorts of ways people can proclaim really great results in a very short amount of time. So just be aware of that ahead of time. It's usually false advertising. Most of these channels, not even a year or two later, are no longer around. And this is probably what you're watching.
I was just sitting here thinking, what a colossal waste of emotional energy to be envious over something that was a lie in the first place. That is just so sad to think that somebody expended mental energy on something that wasn't presented all that truthfully. Look, I don't want to keep beating this dead horse because I want to go on to other stuff. Just be aware that not everything you see out there is as great as is. And anyone who's all about showing you the results and nothing about the process, that's not helping you whatsoever. So let's kind of turn the page here. Let's go on to the comment that actually sparked this video. Was one of your subscribers talked about how they knew someone that made a whole bunch of money in crypto and they didn't make it, and they're now feeling envious. Okay, well, that is a real life situation. You know the person. You can see what they do. This is where you don't need to be envious. You need to make that a positive in your life. It's not a negative. That's a real positive that you have someone you know that's actually done it. What are some other examples, Patrick, that you see where people aren't really, getting the true picture, or they're making it look better than it is?
Well, taking it back to people I know I've told this story before. Being in Las Vegas, everybody has a side hustle, which is great. It's motivating. We don't all want to wait tables all day, which is not always the case in a lot of cities. But in Vegas, people are always doing something. And one of the things that I've seen is people falling into MLMs, multi-level marketing. I won't name the companies, but there's big ones, there's small ones, and sometimes they will become successful enough to where they leave the industry. And you're like, wow, how did they do that? You ask them, they're happy to tell you. There's one thing about MLM people is they will tell you all about what they're doing and try to get you under them. And so I saw a lot of that. And again, it worked for a little bit, and then it didn't. And once it didn't, now, you don't have that anymore. You don't have the job you had, and you got to start from scratch. I saw a lot of this happen in Vegas. Maybe not always the MLM route, but just other things that people started up that seem to be really good on the surface. And again, Rob, it's just even like deep down, I think people know that this might not be the best idea, or historically this hasn't always worked really well. But that desperation of just wanting to get out of that life that you're in right now, even if it's a small possibility, is really alluring. So I think when people see these scammy videos, a tiny part of them, that's all it takes, says to them, you know what? Maybe there's something here, and maybe I should give it a try. And this can be really problematic, I think.
That is 100% spot on. And I'm going to go back to what is happening in envy says a lot about what's happening inside of you. So let's really break into what are the real negatives of envy and where all these feelings might be coming from. So look, as I said earlier, there's always going to be people out there in the world that have success. There's always going to be someone that knocks it out of the park and it's fantastic, has a great run in Forex, and it's a legit run. That's always going to happen. If you look at that person and you feel unhappy about it, we really need to just not worry about the rest of the world, but worry about what's going on inside of you. And we kind of cover this a little bit about the people, Patrick, that, wrote nasty comments to you, was that there was something inside of them that wasn't happy with where they were. So let's focus on that. If you are feeling these feelings of envy, you see that this person over here has made all this money. It's really about you and where you are. One of the main things I've learned as a trader for 25 years is that money is relative. What I thought was a lot of money in year one, I laugh at now. And what I thought was a lot of money in year 5, I laugh at now. But in year one, I would have looked at that person at year 5 and said, oh my gosh, if I could just make that much money. Now, I've just been in Spain. I went to a place called Marbella. Marbella is kind of like the Monaco of Spain. I walked through these places with these huge, amazing yachts with their Lamborghinis parked out front of their yachts. And I thought, I don't even understand this amount of wealth. I don't get what in the hell is going on here with this amount of wealth. Look, I'm doing well, but in relation to the yacht people, I'm poor. I'm totally poor. Now, this is where envy really comes in. If I look at those yachts and I feel bad about myself, what I'm really saying is I don't have the gratitude for what I currently have. Yes, I want more. And then, look, I always want more. That's my personality. But lack of gratitude. The best way to get rid of those negative feelings and envy is to be grateful for what you have. Just be grateful what you have. Now, look, if you're not happy with what you have today, we're going to talk about how to get that going forward. But this is all about lack of gratitude. If you look at someone else, see what they have, and you feel bad about what you have, the fastest way to turn that around is to find ways to be grateful for what you have at the moment. Any words on that, Patrick?
Yeah, I think that sounds like a solution that nobody wants to hear, especially if they're if they're really unhappy in the space they're in. Because I can attest to this. I waited tables for a long time, and even when the money was good, it was inconsistent. So you were like afraid to spend it. So it was almost like not having any money. And you couldn't even really be happy. Like I said, you couldn't pop the champagne bottle because you knew that that load of crap was right around the corner. It was a horrible life. I knew I was capable of so much more. I'd been trading for a while, and that was starting to go well, but that's also really inconsistent. So it was just that same thing all over again. And I was approaching 40, and that was really rough. As much as I like it when people win, and I've always been that way, I always felt like that I personally, VP, should be in a better place in life. And it's not fair that they are and I'm not. And so it does cut at you a little bit. Now, again, we'll talk about gratitude a little more in the solutions part. But yeah, that was one thing that was really lacking. I did have a lot of really good things going on in my life. And I guess I really took them for granted. And because of that, it was just all negative all the time. Now, I did use that negativity as a positive to push me, of course. But yeah, I don't want to say it's a depressing time because I don't think I've ever really felt depression, but it was a really down time. And little things that should not have bothered me a lot. And I'm sure I probably projected that unhappiness on other people. Just like I see in the comments section of not just my videos, but other videos too. So yeah, I definitely think I have been there. I tried really hard not to project on other people, but sometimes you just are where you are. There's nothing you can do.
I want to thank you for basically calling me out on that because you're exactly right. To tell someone who is depressed at the moment to just stop being depressed is kind of a silly thing. So thank you, Patrick, for calling me out on that. We want to deal in actual workable solutions in this trading psychology podcast. So let's cover just a couple more negatives that envy may make you feel, but then let's get into some real workable solutions for how to actually turn this around. One of the things we have on our list that envy creates is the desire to take shortcuts. You see someone else, you see what they've done, and you say, that's where I want to be, and I don't really want to do all the work it takes to get there over 5, 10, 15 years. I want it now. So I'm going to take shortcuts. I think that is one big negative of envy is that you look at what someone has probably worked 5, 10, 15 years for. And in your example, Patrick, I bet nobody knows how many hours you've put into your YouTube channel. I bet I have no idea. And it's probably way more than I would ever guess. No one knows that. But they see your success and they say, I want to be there. I should make it happen right away with shortcuts. So shortcuts are a big thing that envy can cause. Those are the negatives. And then, of course, unrealistic goals and expectations. We've done an episode or two about this, Patrick. I think this is where envy really hurts people, is that they see the 1%. They see the 1/10 of 1%. They see the yacht people and they say, oh my gosh, I want to be the yacht people. Guess what? We don't all get to be yacht people. I'm not ever going to be a yacht person. I'm okay with that. So this is all what envy can do negatively. Is there anything else you want to talk about with the negatives of envy?
Oh, for sure. I can say a lot to what you just said. First of all, I'll never be a yacht person either. Until they invent Starlink, I wouldn't even want a yacht because then you're just kind of floating around doing nothing. And I have to have that stimulation of doing stuff. And I don't have, I don't have Lambo money. I don't even drive a car. It's just I'm just happy kind of doing what I'm doing and saving money just in case the rapture comes. Really, that's my methodology. But yeah, shortcuts. I want to speak to shortcuts though, if I can, because this is the other place where I think I get a lot of hatred. And I have 285,000 subscribers on my YouTube channel. The engagement I get on my videos, the views and everything like that is a fraction of that. Now there could be a lot of reasons. But I think the main reason is, and what I've seen firsthand, is at the end of the day, most people just wanted a shortcut. Most people who are Forex traders, especially, or crypto traders, are just looking for shortcuts. And 4 or 5 videos in, they realize, oh, this guy's not going to give me any shortcuts. This is an actual thing that I have to go through, and I don't want to do all that. So that's another piece of it. And that's one of the things, maybe my expectations of humanity were higher, but that's one of the things I learned right away when I did start my channel. And you said, speaking of that, you talked about all the hours I put in. That's true, but you take the hours I put into my channel and multiply that by 10. That's the amount of hours I put into putting this whole system together, because it did not exist before. And I didn't have anything to go on. I had to create it from scratch. And those hours were excruciating. So it's like, I don't feel any shame for where I've gotten to, because I didn't take any shortcuts at all. And I almost resent people who are looking for them. But then again, I have to take a step back and say, okay, if there was a way to get there quickly, I was interested too. Remember, I started out in penny stocks. That's what penny stocks are. You invest a little, you get a lot right away. And you just keep doing that. And there's nobody talks about the long game in that industry because it's not a thing. And that's how I started. So I get it. Yeah, people have these unrealistic goals and expectations. Jesus Christ. You want to talk about penny stock traders? They are the walking embodiment of that. And this is how I started. It took a harsh realization that it's like, look, man, there's no quick way to get there. So you might as well just put your head down and start the process. There's just no other route to go. There are people out there who did catch lightning in a bottle, and maybe they had the foresight to take profit right away or to stop before the gig is up. I don't know, but the odds are so bad that will ever happen to you. If that's what you're shooting for, you're going to be shooting for it for the rest of your life, and you're never going to get there. So just start the process now. Fall in love with the process and keep going. I know I'm getting a little bit ahead of the solutions part, but while we're on the subject of shortcuts, I want to point out the fallacy of this, because even Mr. Long Game, me, has also fallen into this trap at some point in the past. So I have a feeling that it's probably affected everybody listening to this episode right now.
I will raise my hand along with you and say that I've fallen into that trap as well. My 20s were spent trying to find the shortcuts. And guess what? I hurt myself. I hurt my long-term success several times in my 20s, setting me back years because, again, I just wasn't mature enough. So the negatives of, shortcuts, unrealistic goals and expectations, lack of gratitude, these are all the things that envy do to us. Now, look, envy has some positive to us. One of the things you said, Patrick, was motivation. It motivated you to change. That's a very great thing about envy. When you see someone else and you say, oh my gosh, I want what they have. And if it causes you to be motivated to make changes to get to where they are, that's a wonderful, wonderful way to use envy. But remember, Webster's use the term, painful or resentful awareness. If you can look at someone and envy them and say, I want to do what they've done, I want to go through the process they've gone through, it can be very, very positive.
I agree, and I want to. On that note, I want to kind of end the negative portion of this episode with one thing. Yeah, that's how people should be, but I have a feeling, and maybe it's just the industry I was in and the place I was in, but I would be willing to bet that the majority of people out there, unless they already have very happy, fulfilling lives, have that really horrible combination of being envious, being resentful, not wanting others to win, and their solution, if they have one, is to just either sit there and complain about it all day or to try to get there as fast as possible. This is my observation. I'm not sure if it differs from yours, but just in everyday life, maybe it's because it's the restaurant industry and that's what I was in and that's what I know. But this is the majority of people I've seen. So step number one is to get yourself as far away from this mindset as possible, in my opinion. And then step two is what we're about to talk about now.
I think that's really good advice. And I want to go even further is getting away from people who have this mindset. It's very contagious to be around people who are, looking at something that someone has done very well for themselves and say, oh, they did it by this or this, and be negative about it. So separate yourself out. And then you could use envy as, again, we talked about motivation as a positive. And I think you can use envy to get role models, mentors. Look, I am not a role model, mentor kind of guy. I never have been. I just have always been about doing it myself and figure it out myself. That's just my personality. However, I know that a lot of people in my own personal life that they do much, much better when they can see somebody who they really like has had success. It really, really motivates them. And so I think it's a really positive thing to have a role model. And I remember early on in my trading career reading the book, The New Market Wizards. And it was just interviews with the top traders. Now, this book is like 30 years old. These traders are probably dead by now. But I just remember reading their stories and thinking, that's who I want to be one day. I want to be these people that are in this book being interviewed about their careers. That's what I wanted to be. And I use that. I use those role models as just where I wanted to be in my life when I put in all the work.
I think that's a great way of putting it because growing up, I always said I don't really have any role models, which was kind of an insult to my own father, which is totally not fair. But the reason I said that is because I just never thought the same way other people did, and I didn't know anybody else who thought the way I thought and whose motivations and processes were the same as mine. So I'm just like, well, I don't have any role models. Later on, I realized that they don't have to, think and act exactly the same way you do. As long as they share a couple traits here and there and you like the path they're on, that can be really motivating too. And so my role models later became, like you said, the people I read about. Tim Ferriss was a good one. I'm not going to go out and do all the things he's doing. I have no desire for that. But I liked where his head was, and I liked how he showed me a different way of thinking and a different approach. Same with Gary Vaynerchuk. I don't want to own a gigantic ad agency and never sleep, but so many of the things he said really resonated with me and motivated me. So those kind of became my role models along the way. And I just used that to motivate me. And honestly, I don't think I would be even close to where I'm at right now unless I had those voices in my head at some point. So yeah, don't make the mistake I made and say, well, this person's not really like me a whole lot, and this person doesn't want the exact same thing I want, therefore I'm not going to have them as a role model. Untrue. They can actually be people who are completely different than you, but have just had some kind of effect on your life going forward.
When you were saying those names, David Goggins popped into my mind, and I remember thinking, I think that guy is the coolest guy ever, but there's no effing way I'm going to do what that guy's done. I have no desire to do what he's doing. But again, he's a role model. I look up to him, but no way, I'm not doing what he's doing.
Yeah, I think you have to shift the definition a little bit. Now I don't know if other people thought about this the same way I thought about it, but if you do, for some reason, you think there's nobody out there who's just like you, you're probably right. But there's people who can still really help, and you can latch onto those people, and that's not a bad thing at all. It's a really good thing.
Well, let's shift into how to reframe this emotion of envy. So if you are feeling this, then be aware, okay, this is a negative feeling. And we want you to be able to turn those into positive feelings. And I'm going to start off with a story. One of our junior traders up in Vancouver, Canada, was working with one of our senior traders. And this senior trader, she had been in the business for a long time, and she was a hustler. She had her hands in all different sorts of businesses. And I remember one day I was talking to him, and he said, she is so lucky. She gets lucky all the time. She enters these contests and she wins like this free money or these free concert tickets. She gets lucky. And I said, no, she doesn't get lucky. She's playing the game. Now, he was feeling envious. He was looking at what she was getting and seeing that she was getting lucky, like she would enter these contests and win stuff. And he felt envy. And I asked him, how many times are you playing these contests? How many times are you playing these games? Because I've known her for years, and I know that she's played thousands. She's entered thousands of these games. So when she wins 4 or 5 of them, it may look lucky, but it's not lucky. It's just mathematics. And I really wanted to try to reframe that for him in his mind, because he saw someone who was entering these contests getting lucky. That's all envy. That was negative. That brought negative, resentful feelings on him. And I said, why don't you start playing the game? Why don't you start entering these? And frankly, why don't you have her help you? Hey, tell me which one of these I should enter and how I should enter them, because she's spent a lot of time figuring it out. And all of a sudden, he started entering some things. And I remember one day he won one. I can't remember what it was, but he called me up and he's like, can you believe it? I'm one of the lucky people. And I'm like, no, you're not. You just played mathematics. That's it. You weren't lucky. You were just now playing the game. So I want to use that story to everyone to understand that when you're feeling those feelings of envy, don't look at it as a negative. Look at it as oh my gosh, look at them. They won these games. What are they doing to win these games, and what can I do to do it as well? Copy the process that they had for success.
And I'll give you the other side of that. So if you want something not to do, God, I feel like I'm going to leak his name out. If I do, I'll edit it. But a very good friend of mine who I worked restaurants with for a while. We worked at a lot of the same restaurants. He kind of followed me around, because that whole industry is just about opportunity. If you know somebody, there's a better chance of getting in. So I worked with this guy a lot. And he was a kooky guy, but he was very creative. And he had all of these really great ideas. He was actually a rapper, and I didn't think he was very good, but he had a fan base. He had people that really liked what he did. So, but he never capitalized on that. And I used to always give him trouble for that. I remember one time I was getting on his case about not following through. He's like, I did put out an album. I'm like, you put out a mixtape 10 years ago. And it kind of hit him. He's like, oh, crap, you're right. Maybe I don't follow through on this. He had a lot of really good ideas for different food items. He was just always kind of scheming up these things, and most of them were crap, but some of them were very good. And I actually let them know. I'm like, hey, you should do something about that. It's not going to cost you a whole lot. You just got to do this, this, and this. And he never followed through. Now, at the same time, he also didn't make the best decisions in life. And so he was one of those people who was kind of like a hard luck guy. People would look at him who didn't really know him and be like, man, that guy's just always unlucky. Not knowing what I knew, that not only are there some bad decisions mixed in, maybe, but there's also a lot of not capitalizing on ideas and taking initiative. And, just even if it costs a little bit of money, putting up the money anyway and just seeing what happens. So I think it's one of the 48 laws of power. Always avoid the chronically unlucky. And that really was this guy. And those who didn't know him might have felt sorry for him, because I know where he is in life right now. It did not go his way. But if you actually knew him the way I knew him, he was pretty much the opposite of that girl you were talking about, Rob. to where she attempted things that were easy to attempt, and probably, a lot of these contests were free. He didn't. And wouldn't you know, one is known as lucky, one is known as unlucky.
And that is exactly the story here. And so the next thing we want to talk about on how to fix envy is when you look at someone, and say, I want that. Don't focus on what they have. Focus on what they did to get there. We talked about copying the process they had for success. And not just the process. Yes, the process is important. But why did they get to that top place in the first place? I can tell you right now, it's because of passion and it's because of effort. So if you want to have a role model and you want to look at this role model and say, I want to have what they have, not what they have physically, what they have mentally and emotionally. That's what you want. That's really what you should be envious about. And that's what you should want. I want to be as passionate as Gary Vaynerchuk. I want to be as hardworking as David Goggins. I want to have those traits that led them to those success. That's how you should use envy to really help you out, is that I want to have that kind of passion. Now look, I can never have the passion that Gary Vee has. He's just off the chart. He can motivate me to have more passion than I naturally would. And that's a great benefit. So again, emulate the passion, emulate the effort, and emulate the process they did to get there.
I think that's a great one because, don't sit there and be all mopey that you don't have the drive and work ethic of some of these people. But also understand that if you have a shitty drive and work ethic, that it needs to get better, and use those people to motivate you. One of the things that, while we're on the topic of Gary Vee, that he did, and then I think kind of ties back to what we were talking about earlier, Rob, is he does something called gratitude training. And this sounded kind of hokey and corny when I first heard about it. But then I actually started doing it. And during some of my lowest points in my 30s, it actually alleviated a lot of that pain and made things, I just felt a lot better because I shifted my perspective a little bit. So what it is when you go to bed, and this is a big one for me because I worked nights, I would come home, I'd be really stressed, and that's where all my negative feelings would start to bubble up. Is that right before you go to bed, name 3 things that you're grateful for. Now, I took it down, and I took it down to 1. And it could just be the most minor thing because there's only so many things in life to be grateful for, I guess. But I would even say, okay, I'm grateful that traffic was light today and I didn't have to scramble to work, or I'm grateful this person smiled at me when I hit her with my shopping cart instead of getting really mad. Just little things, as trivial as they might sound. Doing that right before I went to bed ended up in a lot more restful sleep because I wasn't spending the entire time in bed rewinding my rough day or reminding myself of how I wasn't where I thought I was in life. Because for some, I don't know why this wizardry worked, but for some reason just by doing that at the end of the day and reframing things just a little tiny bit of just the most trivial, goofy stuff that there is to be grateful for, I was able to really kind of get myself out of that constant state of loathing and take that weight off my shoulders, which made, eventually succeeding over time a lot easier. I don't know if this is a hack. I don't know if this is going to work for everybody, but it really, really worked for me. Do you have any kind of take on that? You've always been very good at kind of breaking these down and processing them.
I think that's a fabulous idea. And let me just give one analogy here before we end this episode. I've always said life is like a stock chart. Now, I can't say life is like a Forex chart because if you take a look at a long-term chart on like euro dollar or euro Swiss franc, it's flat for the long term. So stocks, we have to use stocks because stocks go up over time because of population growth and inflation. So stocks generally have an upward trajectory. And if you take a look at a stock chart, you're looking at one candle every day. And whenever you take a look at a chart of like, let's use Apple as an example. Apple has been a fantastic performer over the last 20 years. There's been more up days than down days, but there's been down days. And there's been retracements. There's been bases where Apple didn't go anywhere for 3 months. There's been bear markets where Apple lost 30, 40% of its value. But every day is a candle. And in your lifetime, if you go to work, whatever it is you do, trading, restaurants, whatever it is, and you put in full effort, and you are mindful of what you're doing, they're not all going to be green candles. But if you can keep the momentum going every single day, you are going to be like Apple stock. Now, look, you may not be a $3 trillion company. You might only be a $300,000 company. And maybe that's all you could do over 20 years of your life. But guess what? It's better than where you were. So if you can be grateful for what you have today, and you can look to others who have succeeded and use that as a motivation to get up every day and try to get yourself another green candle that day, then that's great. Go for it. Use envy to power yourself forward, not to hold yourself back.
And that's a really great thing you said, because I feel like this whole time we've been talking about people who are just at or near their lowest point. Whether we did that or not, I don't know, but that's kind of how I felt like, the type of person we've been talking about this entire time. Once you start getting a little bit of momentum going in your success and you start to hit that more upward trajectory, there are going to feel like times where you just get that gigantic red candle to where you felt like, so much of this work that I've put in, it just completely got erased in a very short amount of time. But zoom out a bit. Use a longer time frame. Chances are you're still on an upward trajectory. Just the numbers might not reflect that. My biggest thing, Rob, is, I understand this because I've been through it so many different times, to where, and I think I've mentioned this a number of times on the show, but maybe I just didn't put it in these type of words. But really, every day I wake up, I just try to win the day. That's it. I'm not looking too far ahead. I just want to get things done. I want to move forward a little bit. And there's going to be some days where I don't do that for whatever reason. But I just know that if I keep doing this, like you just said, Rob, it's going to be that chart of Apple, to where despite all the crazy red and green candles, I'm still tilting upward. And if I'm doing that, I just know, good things are bound to happen.
Absolutely. Let me finish off with one of my favorite quotes ever. The difference between successful people and unsuccessful people are when successful people fall, they fall forward. We all fall. We all screw up. But did you fall forward? Because if you fell forward, when you got up, you moved. So just keep moving every day. Win the day. Guess what? If you lose a day, go to bed. Think of all the things you're grateful for. Wake up in the morning and get a green candle under your belt. Just keep moving, keep working. We've talked about this a lot in this podcast. Just fall in love with the process. Don't worry about the result. Put it all in the process. One day, and this happened to me, one day I worked and worked and worked and worked, and one day I stood up and looked around. I said, holy shit, I made it. Fall in love with the process.
Yeah, fail forward. That's the best advice ever. And you can't fail forward if you're like my unlucky friend who never even takes initiative and just sits back and who's sour all the time. So I feel like we've given you the blueprint on what to do here in terms of eliminating envy, because let me tell you something. And again, from a YouTuber's perspective, none of my hateful comments come from successful people. I wonder why that is. So on that note, for Rob and VP, thank you for listening to episode 41 of the Trading Psychology Podcast, and we will see you next week.
Goodbye, everybody.